This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, February 23rd, 2026. On the show today, the philosophy of Thomas Hobbes and the latest in Mayan archaeology. This is a show about theme parks, right? Then in our main segment, Jim gives us the history of Disney's Hotel New York. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says California's redwood trees have an indescribable appeal, a certain je ne sais quoi, if you will. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Len. Quick question. Mm-hmm. Did you ever read John Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie in Search of America?
I've not.
Okay. It's the book that this Nobel Prize winner wrote back in 1960 that covers a 10,000-mile drive that Steinbeck made from Maine to Salinas, California. By the way, that was where John was born.
10,000 miles from Maine to California? It's by way of Anchorage?
There we go. You know, again, he wandered, wanted to see America, and he brought along his poodle, Charlie. And there's a section of this book where these two stop in Sequoia National Forest, where Steinbeck, who was and still is one of my favorite writers, waxes poetic about this spectacular stand of trees. He says, "The redwoods, once seen, leave a mark or create a vision that stays with you always. They are ambassadors from another time." And I'm sorry, that's a wonderful piece of writing.
Oh, it is. It's fantastic. Yeah. To see him in person, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that people forget how, that Steinbeck was also a funny writer. And one of my favorite parts of Travels with Charlie is when he goes on to describe the 2 nights that he and his dog spend camping in a redwood forest, where poor Charlie almost dies of dehydration, trying to mark, these massive trees.
So, he's going around the same tree, which has like 100-foot diameter.
There we go. So there you go, folks. The classy start for today's show. We went from a Nobel Prize winner for literature straight to dog pee jokes. So, but nowhere to go but up.
It's something for everyone on this show. That's right, the way I like to think of it.
There you go.
All right. And speaking of something for everyone, let's do a quick shout out to our subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Sam Cook, Chris Pat Stone, PBM, hey Peter, Bride Kramer, Eric Yurchak, and Donna Costell. Jim, this is the Disney's Popcorn Bucket team working on a new Expedition Everest design, a mountain-shaped bucket complete with sparkling snow details. And while the Yeti-shaped handle is permanently fixed in the same awkward position, an inexpensive flashing LED makes it seem like it moves. True story.
Wow. Oh, okay. You're going to make somebody, working in, attractions start drinking early today, Len.
The consumer products people are like, wait, say that again. Hold it right down. All right.
There we go. Okay.
On to the news, folks. The Disney Dish News is sponsored by UnlockedMagic.com from our friends at DVCRentalStore.com. Jim, next month is the start of planting season and a great time to visit Epcot's Flower and Garden Festival for inspiration. Our friends at UnlockedMagic.com have discounted theme park tickets at prices better than Disney's. Plus, Soren will make you forget that every tomato you grow takes 6 hours of labor and $47 in gardening supplies. So visit UnlockedMagic.com now and get started on springtime.
Oh, okay.
On to the news. All right. Jim, in the Magic Kingdom, they've made a small operational update to the Disney Starlight Parade on nights when 2 parades are performed. So now the first parade starts on Main Street, USA, and ends on Frontierland, but the second parade starts in Frontierland and ends on Main Street, USA. And I think that's more convenient for guests who want to exit the park after the first parade, since it clears out of Main Street sooner. So that's good if you've got small kids and you're trying to, get back to your hotel. Also, if you're watching on Main Street, just a little tip, standing on the theater side of the street, not the Emporium side of the street, will give you a direct path to the exits after the parade too. So we've seen this before, right, Jim?
Yeah, excellent tip. Angela Ragno would approve. The theme park ninja. That's exactly what you need to do. So,
all right. And some news from Universal Parks. Jim, this came out literally like an hour before you and I started recording. Did you see that Universal Orlando is now selling a week-long ticket that gives guests 6 or 7 days of access to all of its theme parks?
Yes, and I'm intrigued by this headline because it says all 4 of the acclaimed parks, which means that
they count Volcano Bay as a park.
Yes, and so this means Volcano Bay will be open when this admission media is available, or
I think it's it's for a year. The other interesting thing that's kind of in the footnotes of this offer is you also get a $300 hotel dining credit when they book a stay of 5 nights or longer at one of the the more expensive Universal Orlando hotels. So this is Universal now putting out a ticket and dining deal like we've seen, similar offers from Disney in the past.
Wow. What does this tell you about 2026, Len?
Yeah, this is, again, we're in that period where, nothing major is opening this year. So everyone's got to kind of do what they can until the next round of attractions start opening. I did note that MCO, Orlando's airport, put out a statistic last week that said passenger traffic was up again to record numbers. So the people are coming. I think this is, Disney and Universal trying to ensure they get as many of those tourist dollars, as they can. So they're trying to sweeten the deal here using various combinations of things to get those stays to be longer.
Okay. I get that.
A couple of other bits of news from Universal. Jim, on last week's show, we mentioned that Epic Universe had changed 3 times the attraction lineup for early park admission. And we recorded that, Jim, on Thursday morning. Jim, guess what happened Thursday afternoon?
Oh, no. Really?
Here's the new lineup. Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry, Hiccup's Wing Gliders, Viking Training Camp, which I don't think we've seen before, Dragon Racers Rally, which I don't think we've seen before, the Toothless Meet and Greet, which we definitely haven't seen before, Mario Kart, Yoshi's, and Minecart Madness. So I am sure that when Universal says now that this is Epic's lineup going through the end of March, Jim, write it in stone. It's the 11th commandment. It will never change again, right?
Okay. Keep those chisels handy, folks. I'm just saying.
And speaking of chisels, Jim, Universal Orlando has selected The Boring Company for its next-gen transportation project in a memo sent out by the Shingle Creek Special District. Last week we said it might not be tunnels, noting that the water table and rock type in Florida isn't really conducive to tunneling, and that The Boring Company uses surface cars in some parts of Las Vegas. Well, our friend Alicia Stella over at Orlando Park Stop noted that The Boring Company might actually be looking at tunnels based on the responses that they submitted to the Shingle Creek Improvement District in this request for qualifications. So, tunnels.
Okay. All right. The next thing I think we want to find out is a route, but I guess that'll be a while before those documents get filed.
Yeah. So we're at the very, very initial steps of this, but super interesting there.
Okay.
All right, Jim, on to some industry news. Thanks to everyone who wrote in with details after I asked on last week's show what Project Atlas is. I am reasonably confident now that it's Shanghai Disneyland's second gate. Also, Jim, nice job in researching the specifics of what's going on there. The project name is a hint. That's what we can say right now. And we can talk more about that in a future episode as we're allowed.
There we go.
Also, Jim, future Disney CEO Josh D'Amaro was talking about Galaxy's Edge in an interview last week. It said something interesting that I want to highlight here. D'Amaro was talking about upcoming changes to Smuggler's Run, and he said that guests like Smuggler's Run, but don't love it. Those are his words. He also said that the experience that the 4 guests get as the gunner or engineer is not as good as the experience the 2 guests get as the pilots up front.
Very true. Yeah.
All of that is true. Yes. Anyone that's been on the ride knows that it's true. But Jim, this is the kind of public candor that we get from former CEOs, not future CEOs, right? And I give Josh a lot of credit. I am being sincere here for saying the thing that's true. It's like Emmanuel Macron saying, we French like some of our cheeses. but don't love some of the cheeses, right? When I heard Josh say this, I turned to Laurel and said, did I just match with Josh tomorrow on MDE? Like it was a dating app, like we were on Hinge. Like heart aflutter when he said it. Okay. So a couple of things here, right? Let me put this in context. And Jim, I'd love your thoughts here. Josh knows that Disney spent $1.2 billion on Galaxy's Edge, and that got them to right? And I think you would say it's $1.2 billion each, where Disney is saying $1.2 billion in total, whatever. And Josh knows that he's about to spend $60 billion on new theme park projects, where he is going to be the CEO accountable for it. And I think, tell me if I'm wrong here, Jim, this is Josh's way of telling Walt Disney Imagineering, I don't want to spend $60 billion to get to again.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it in one there. I mean, lots of hard lessons with Black Spire Outpost, and and more to the point, lots of steel, lots of concrete. Not an easy thing to change now, which is why, for example, they zeroed in on Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, because it's like, okay, we know they love everything right up until they step out of the Millennium Falcon into the ride. So now, that's what we need to fix.
And there's stuff that they can do, like, the upcoming Mandalorian and Grogu overlay, right? There are things that would be extremely more difficult, like, making the gunner position more interesting. That would be hard, right? So they can do what they can. But I think the point of this comment is that Josh has learned about spending money to do things the right way once. I think I've said before on the show, I had a former boss at American Express whose philosophy was cry once. Like, spend the money to get the thing you want up front and cry about it once, rather than crying about it after you've spent money and have to do it again, right? Cry once is a good philosophy.
Absolutely.
And Jim, that brings us to Villain's Land.
Yes. And please tell the nice story about your week so far.
Yeah. Okay. So last Saturday afternoon, I posted 3 sentences in a WDW Magic forum thread about Piston Peak and Villain's Land. And here are the 3 sentences. I'm hearing the initial plans for Villain's Land have been scrapped. Imagineers have been told to think of bigger, bolder ideas. Budget secondary. And then I went about my day. Apparently, Jim, it was a slow news week because that got picked up Monday by the wider Disney social media community. I think going viral is what the kids call it.
That they do.
Right?
That they do.
And Jim, this is the part of the show where I remind you not to say anything that might get 3 Imagineers locked in a room with management, rubber hoses, and car batteries.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Understandably, some folks have expressed doubts or skepticism about what I said, and that's fair, right? I could be wrong, right? And words like scrapped, which is the specific word that I was told, don't work well with the level of scrutiny that my 3 sentences got. So again, reminding Jim that if he does so much as cough in this segment, people are going to interpret that as meaning something. Let me shed some light on this without going into specific details. Also, for Dave, our editor, put your finger on Jim's mute button right now. Okay. So this rethink started over Christmas. Jim, you investigated this independently from me, and you can confirm that, yes?
Yes, I can. Evidently, folks came back from the holiday break, and they had new marching orders.
And Jim, you, me, and our friends who've also investigated this now have more than enough sources to confirm the basics of the story, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And your investigation, without going into details, also turned up a bunch of very specific things that I did not know at the time. Things that are not yet public, including the specific IPs and the ideas for different iterations of the stuff in the land. You don't have to say what they are, but that's true, right?
Yep.
Okay. So for clarity, the attraction designs that were in place around that time, pre-Christmas, are either not the designs going forward, or to use my own words, now trying for bigger and better. So if you're familiar with the ship of Theseus in philosophy, this is that. I like the analogy about George Washington's axe because it's simpler. And the idea is this, right? George Washington had an axe for cutting down trees. The axe has 2 parts, a handle and a steel head. The axe was handed down and used by generations of family members to the point where the axe handle has been replaced 3 times and the axe head was replaced twice. And the question is, after those changes, is it still George Washington's axe, right? That's what we're talking about here. All right. So to be specific about Villain's Land, the thing that looks like a train station in the South Florida Water Management District plans is, I think, still a train station, right? I think it is.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The original concept art showed what looks like an outdoor coaster track.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
An outdoor coaster is still in the plans, right? But let me point out, Goofy's Barnstormer, Slinky Dog Dash, and Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventures are all outdoor coasters. I'm saying that if the original plans were for one of those, and the new plans are for another one of those, that counts as different plans. And if folks want to say the opposite, which I understand, right, that Disney building any coaster would be the same thing, I would encourage you to ask yourself which side of that debate you want to be on, because I know where I'm comfortable.
Okay.
Fair, right?
No, I think that's a valid point.
Also, the indoor dark ride is still an indoor dark ride. I will point out that Journey into Imagination and Rise of the Resistance are both indoor dark rides. I'm saying they're not the same thing, and starting with one and ending up with the other is different planes. Again, people are free to disagree. But even more specifically, the Great Movie Ride and Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway are both attractions in the exact same building, Grumman's Chinese Theater, and so have the same physical footprint. I'm also saying those are two different attractions, and going from one to the other is a change in plans. I think that's fair.
I can't fight with that particular argument. I think that's solid.
Okay, so let me try to shed some light around why this is happening now. And keep in mind Josh Tomorrow's comment about liking Smuggler's Run, not loving it. The most important metric that management will use to determine the success of Villain's Land is how much it raises per cap revenue, the additional amount of money each guest spends in Walt Disney World once Villain's Land opens. It's not guest satisfaction. It's not IAAPA industry awards for ride design. It's money. You can understand almost every decision Disney makes based on how much money it gives back to shareholders.
True.
And Jim, I guarantee you, tell me if I'm wrong, that Disney management has paid attention to what Comcast's management has been saying on its recent earnings calls about how Epic Universe is raising per cap revenue in Orlando.
Again, true.
Yeah, and I know that there's a specific thing that you know about Epic Universe that Disney's fascinated with that we're not going to talk about here. Okay, but Comcast has said that people spend more money in Epic than in other parks, and that they're staying longer at Universal as a result. That means dining in more restaurants and spending more time in a park where they're buying more merch. Okay, so Disney has 3 direct ways to measure per cap spending in Villain's Land: Lightning Lane revenue, restaurant revenue, and merch sales. Hotel rooms and length of stay would probably be the 4th, but because by the time Villain's Land opens, we'll have a lot of other stuff open, it's hard to be certain that a hotel stay is entirely because of one specific project like Villain's Land. You can kind of tease it out of the statistics, maybe even ask it in a survey, but the other things are way more straightforward to count, right? Okay. Lightning Lane is the most important of those because it's a digital product that's like 90 to 95% profit margin. I'm guessing restaurant margins are like 50%. I'm not sure what merch margins are. They might be more or less than restaurants, but I don't know how to account for things like markdown and stuff. I don't know. If anyone knows, let me know. Okay. So that means that one of the rides in Villain's Land has to be a Lightning Lane single pass attraction that is so good that a family of 4 is willing to spend an extra $100 just to ride that one ride. Not just for 1 year, not for 5 years, more like 10 years of Lightning Lane single pass revenue like that. That's fair, right? And Jim, I think that's what Josh's like, not love comment kind of is getting to, right?
Yes.
Fair. Okay. So when the Villain's Land concept art came out, one of the only identifiable things was what looked like an outdoor coaster track. And a reasonable assumption was this was the e-ticket Lightning Lane single pass attraction for Villain's Land. Fair?
Yeah, we've all seen that piece of concept art, and the blackthorn forest that seems to be cradling a coaster track.
Right. But an outdoor coaster has to close during Florida's thunderstorms. And that's bad for Lightning Lane in general. I am 100% sure that park ops pointed out that if the ride is closed long enough, those Lightning Lanes turn into Good Anywhere Lightning Lane reservations, which complicates the standby lines at every other major attraction in the Magic Kingdom. And I'm sure, Jim, that finance said they don't want to give out Lightning Lane single pass refunds when it rains because that makes for unpredictable revenue. Fair?
Fair.
Okay. And it can still be, and it will be, right? This coaster, a lightning lane multi-pass attraction, almost certainly a tier 1, depending on the order in which the rides open. If they don't open at the same time, it may even briefly be the lightning lane single pass attraction, but because of weather, it's unlikely to be the long-term single pass. So the outdoor coaster can't be the thing that drives 10 years of lightning lane single pass sales, which means that Disney management now knows that the dark ride has to be the e-ticket, the lightning lane single pass for 10 years ride. And the financial success of the land now depends on that. And so, Jim, what kind of extra scrutiny does that add to the ride?
I mean, the crazy amount of pressure that is now placed on this particular attraction, given what it's got to have for capacity on an hourly basis, the sort of experience that it's got to be that inspires guests to walk off it and go straight into a gift shop and get something, that gives them bragging rights that I went on this thing. That's crazy pressure.
Yeah, it's got to be the theme park equivalent of doing a psychiatric evaluation while you're doing a colonoscopy at the same time. Like we're looking at everything all at once, right? So I guarantee you management has walked every inch of that ride design and is asking themselves if people will pay $25 more per person to see this specific effect or that specific animatronic. There's probably a junior analyst in Yield management who's being asked by Imagineering if the big finale is enough of a showstopper. They have to love it, not like it. Right. So it's reasonable to assume that one of the things Imagineering was asked to do, again, coming out of that Christmas break, was to come up with ideas that would help ensure this dark ride is the very best that it can be. That's what's happening now.
Yeah. That again, that is okay. You and I have been chatting with folks, and that is what we've been hearing.
Now let's talk about the restaurant in Villains Land again, Jim. Don't get anyone in trouble.
Okay.
The gold standard for Disney park restaurant revenue is Be Our Guest. For more than a decade it was, and it still might be, the highest grossing restaurant in any Disney theme park anywhere in the world. And I don't think it's close. In terms of dining revenue, the restaurants just below Be Our Guest include the character dining experiences. One thing that Be Our Guest and character dining locations and other high demand places like Space 220 and California Grill during fireworks have in common is that Disney has fixed price menus that guarantee them higher than average per person revenue if you want to eat in those restaurants. You can't show up as a party of 4, order 4 waters and split 1 appetizer, stay for an hour and get out for $35, right? Fixed price menus is how Disney increases per cap spending in the restaurants. And revenue might be more important than food quality or guest satisfaction. It's at least first among equals. And we know that because when Be Our Guest implemented fixed price menus, guest satisfaction declined substantially. You can literally point to the specific date it happened. I have the graph. And Disney was willing to live with that because of the revenue, right? So all of these things are important. Food quality is important. Presentation is important. Experience is important. Revenue is first among equals. Okay. So that means that the restaurant in Villains Land has to be so good and so in demand that Disney can implement fixed price menus and get above average revenue for the next 10 years. So like the scrutiny that the e-ticket ride is getting now, the restaurant design is being looked at in minute detail. And I'm not talking about the food because the menus are a long way off, right? They want to know whether the theming and, for lack of a better word, entertainment in that restaurant is going to get that family of 4 to spend $300 on one meal there versus $100 at a quick service restaurant.
That it is, and
that's what's being looked at right now. And and I'll give you credit here because I didn't. Of the specific iterations that this restaurant has gone through, and we can talk about that more later on.
Okay. Yes.
Future show.
Again, we have to protect people here, folks. So
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So the last thing I think that's being discussed internally right now, the coaster is going to have some sort of height limit that excludes some small children. In order for this dark ride to be exciting and thrilling enough, it might be scary. And that would also exclude some small children. So if there's just those 2 rides, it's not as appealing a land for families with small children. But those families have money, so we need something that gets them into the land. Again, per cap spending in the land is important. A small B or C ticket ride, not necessarily indoors, but maybe covered, again, because of rain, would help here. And I wouldn't be surprised to hear of different concepts for that land over the next few months.
Yeah, and all I can say about that specific aspect of this project is they are circling back on some ideas that the company has looked back as far as 30 years ago.
Yep.
That there's a lot of stuff on the table right now that came out of the files, because that's the thing of this whole Josh Tomorrow, like not love.
Yep.
They want to give Mr. Tomorrow what he wants.
Yeah.
It's the old Walt Disney story about it's hard to choose between one. So it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
get this man some options.
Yeah. It's funny because when you said that, you told me what the iteration concepts were for the restaurant. And when we get to talk about that at some future show, that is going to be the clearest example of like not love. Because you told me the original concept and I thought that was great. But then you told me the current concept and I like that even more. Like I understand how you can't get fixed price dining from the first concept, but you can definitely get it from the second one. Like that makes total sense to me. And all of this kind of fits in, in context. So. All right, Jim, let's move on to our next segment. So this is interesting because you and I normally record on Thursday mornings.
We do.
But now we're recording Saturday afternoon. And the reason for breaking up this recording into two parts is that after we recorded on Thursday, I went to a Mayan archaeology conference at Disney's Coronado Springs. And for those of you who are wondering what I'm doing at a Mayan archaeology conference, number one, I was invited. Number two, Imagineering presented last year on some ideas around Indiana Jones. And Imagineering was presenting this year also around Indiana Jones. The conference rules were such that everything that Imagineering said is essentially under NDA. And even for those aspects of the things that they said during the conference, which was made available to the public. I'm not entirely sure what I can talk about. I'm not going to talk about any of it. Yeah.
Well, good night, folks.
Good night, folks. Exactly.
Okay.
That said, I mean, there were a couple of really interesting talks in the presentation that were not by Disney that did not have NDAs, and I want to go over those.
Okay.
So first of all, huge shout out to Matt Saunders for organizing this thing, to George Bay, who is one of the world's foremost authorities on Mayan archaeology. I mean, it's a great lineup. It's everybody in the United States who has anything to do, the institutions that research Mayan culture and Mayan archaeology. They are well represented there. So for some reason, Tulane University is a really big center for Mayan research. I guess it's because it's right across the Gulf from the Yucatan.
Okay.
And so there are people there. Anyway, so a couple of things that I want to highlight from talks. Again, not from any Disney talks, but from people who were there. So the first one today was by a guy named Jaime Awe, and that was titled "Cave Dwelling Animals of the Underworld and Their Incorporation in Ancient Maya Ideology." So really interesting thing in that, animals, play symbolic roles in Mayan culture. And of those, some of the more important animals, are bats, jaguars, snakes, serpents, and crocodiles. And Jaime actually showed some really interesting photos. They have like camera traps set up in caves, in these areas in Mesoamerica where you can actually see these things in caves. And it's really interesting to see, like, I didn't realize that if I walked into a cave in Central America, I could see a crocodile.
Wow. Okay.
That's just a whole other level of scary for me, right? But one of the things that Jaime pointed out was that bats are symbols of death and guardians of the underworld, and jaguars, snakes, and crocodiles also feature prominently in sort of the Mayan representation of the not only the world but the universe as a whole. So apparently crocodiles are supposed to represent the earth, and so imagine the earth as land, right? Sort of land sitting in a vast ocean. A crocodile floats in the ocean too. So you can kind of get where that's going.
Okay, and just want to pause here for a moment for those who, got to walk through the land in those weeks prior to the closing of Dinosaur. There was that umbilicus of construction fences where you walked past the Encanto imagery, and then you suddenly got to the indie inspired imagery, which included, I want to say, it definitely had bats, and I remember a jaguar or two. So interesting. This got discussed at today's conference.
And it's funny that you mention bats, because one of my favorite presentations for the entire weekend was this guy named Mark Zender, who I love. Mark is one of the best speakers I've ever seen. He weaves together, his analysis of long dead languages and ancient texts with modern pop culture references. And I swear to God, if I didn't have a twin already, I would say that Mark and I were related. Because and Mark is from Chile, and again, one of the preeminent, research institutions for Mayan archaeology, in the United States. Mark is just an incredible speaker. I enjoy talking to him. And listening to him talk. He could read the phone book, and I would listen to Mark, talk about the phone book. His talk was titled "Creatures of the Night: Bats in Classic Maya Art and Writing." And so, bats are nocturnal, right? And they're considered predatory, right, along with the jaguars and other things. So he showed how the symbolism for bats is used throughout Mayan art and Mayan writing, and basically walked us through the evolution of the Mayan language and all of its different forms, because it's not just one language, right? It splits off like, basically every other language. But the talk about bats twice in this, especially when it's related to sort of like death in the underworld. I think we already know from last year's talk that the underworld might feature somewhere in Indiana Jones' story. So I wouldn't be surprised to see bats somewhere in there. Again, Imagineering did not say anything specifically about bats one way or the other. And I'm not going to say anything that they did talk about. We're just avoiding that.
Okay.
But it would make sense that given these animals that classic Mayan culture used to represent things like the underworld and death and whatnot, that they would feature somewhere in the story. The other interesting thing I wanted to mention, and I love this, there's an artist named Patricia Martin Morales, and she's a Mayan artist. And last year, to kick off the conference organizers had Patricia do a vase commemorating the conference, and that vase was given to the Imagineering team. This year, they did a drinking vessel, and my Spanish is horrible. Patricia spoke in Spanish. My Spanish is really, really bad. If I understand correctly, it was a drinking vessel for chocolate. If my Spanish is bad, my ability to read Mayan hieroglyphics is worse. So I think this is what the vessel said. It had this week's date on it in Mayan hieroglyphics. And it said, this plate is dedicated. It's the plate of supernatural beings for chocolate. The owners of this plate are the sages and scribes of this thing. And so it was presented to Disney's Imagineering team. Again, this isn't part of Disney's presentation. This is part of the overall conference, so I'm comfortable talking about that. But essentially, I would not be surprised to see both of these items on display somewhere are in this part of tropical Americas, because it is made using traditional techniques with traditional pigments and traditional Mayan symbolism. So I would not be surprised to see a vase and a rather large, 18, 20 inches wide, round, chocolate serving vessel. Yeah. And the other thing, and I don't think this has anything to do with tropical Americas, but, there was a talk, on Friday about, food diplomacy, and how, women used food and food diplomacy sort of like to make alliances and form social bonds and keep social bonds and stuff like that. in the Mayan culture. And one of the things that I didn't realize from attending last year was that tamales are specifically represented in a lot of Mayan art, and tamales and corn. Corn is a really big crop in Mayan culture, and a lot of the prayers, like a lot of the invocations of the gods, is to bring rain for better corn harvests. So the person I was sitting next to in the conference. And we looked at each other, and I think this talk was right before lunch, and we were like, I could go for some tamales right now.
There we go.
Two, if we don't have tamales in in tropical America, something will have gone wrong. But that was super fun. But the talks were fantastic. I learned a lot, especially about the Mayan mythology or Mayan symbolism around death in the underworld. So that was really, really good. I enjoyed it a lot. There's a hieroglyphic workshop tomorrow that Mark Zender is doing from Tulane with Harry Katunen, who's from, I think, Finland. And so I'm going to go enjoy that. And I mentioned Harry Katunen from the University of Helsinki because he did the third underworld-related talk of the conference. And this was on owls, like the birds, owls, and the symbolism that owls have in ancient, Mesoamerica. You would think vultures. I mean, vultures are present in Mesoamerica. You would think vultures would be sort of like the bird symbol of death, but it's actually owls. Yeah. And I don't know where this, if this is going to be anywhere in, tropical Americas or anything in the symbolism of the Indiaroid, but, that was something interesting that I learned, and I wouldn't be surprised if that got incorporated somewhere, somehow in this ride.
No doubt. I mean, I say this as somebody who lives in, the Northeast, and owls, woof. I mean, from the fact that they can basically fly totally silent.
And they pointed that out. Harry actually pointed that out. That's one of the apparently that creeped out the Mayans.
Absolutely.
I think that's what I got out of it.
And that coupled with the ability to almost, I want to say it's 300 degrees, not 360, but it's
270. He actually brought this up. This was in the talk. Yeah. It was really interesting. Yeah. Birds can't turn their heads that much. Also, I didn't know this either, but I learned this in the talk. Owls can't move their eyes, and that's why their necks move.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, no. I realize this is one of those reading the tea leaves moments, but it's just the notion of when you talk this much about the underworld and, certain animals, it's, A plus B equals C, and it'll be interesting to see what we see inside of this Mayan temple. Speaking of which, through third party removed, that sort of thing, we actually have a ballpark now for the opening of Indy.
I can't. Let's put it this way. I don't think it's going to be January, and that's all. I'm going to say.
There we go.
I don't think that's surprising to anyone given their construction at this point.
Okay.
I don't know what the day is. I literally did not ask any specific question of anyone at Imagineering during this entire 3-day thing because I know how that looks, right? I mean, we talked about things like, where you're from, where's your family, stuff. Did not ask a single question about anything, any current project that is going on, and that's not how this works, right? I wouldn't do that anyway.
Okay. So, but not January of 2027. There you go. You heard it. Okay.
Not January of 2027. Right.
All right.
Anyway, the one thing I will say about the Imagineering presentation is everyone I met on that team is deeply, deeply interested in the world of the Maya and is extremely respectful of the traditions and the mythology and the culture, not only the ancient culture, but going on to today. They've made multiple trips, to Central America, to Belize, to the Yucatan and stuff like that. Everything they're doing here is fantastic. I am super excited about this ride. I think it's going to be fantastic. I think the whole land is going to be great. I've limited experience, talking to Disney as a project is going on. But they are doing absolutely everything right here. And I am super excited for when this land's open. And I'm super excited for you guys to see it all. So very excited about that.
There we go.
If I got nothing else out of 2 years of going to a Mayan archaeology conference, it's that they're trying really, really hard to honor and represent the culture of the Maya correctly. So hats off to them.
And now I want tamales and chocolate.
It's funny because I was talking to one of the conference organizers. I'm like, I may have a week free this summer. Do you need help in Belize? Anyway, so we'll see. Anyway, all right, Jim. On to listener questions. Here's one from Michael, who said, we just got back from Walt Disney World, and for the first time for us, we used the PhotoPass service. It was great. We got all kinds of memorable photos over the visit. The photographers were awesome as well. My question is, for the extra magic photos, where they later add digital characters or highlights, are they using AI, or is that being done manually offshore? One photographer said it could take a day or two for those pics to show up, and to me, that hints of offshore work. And so, Michael, it could be one, the other, or some combination of both. I went back and looked at patents Disney's filed in this specific area of guest photographs before around this technology. And I included a link in the show notes to one that they filed way back in 2015 that describes specifically adding effects to photos after the fact. And I know at one point they had, Jim, right, they had on-site people to do quality checks on in-ride photos, right, to make sure that people weren't doing anything offensive in the ride photos. Right? So it could be a combination of both, right?
Yeah, I mean, the weird part of it is that, AI in theory is teachable. And the notion was that, if you give it enough examples of this is guest behavior that we frown on, then they can do that sort of thing. They can, okay, she's got her top up, this doesn't go out, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it could be both.
Okay.
I suspect it may be one of those things where AI gets the first run through and then someone just, offshore is presented the image, sort of like Amazon Mechanical Turk works, and all they have to do is click a button that says, good, yes or no. It could be that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim gives us the history of Disney's Hotel New York. We'll be right back.
TaxAct's filing software and live tax experts can help small businesses easily knock out their taxes. Actually, our experts can help you find deductions and credits for any sized business. Itty-bitty businesses, medium-sized, really big, mid-sized, small businesses, companies with 0 employees, and mom-and-pop conglomerates. Yep, our tax experts can help all of them. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
And we're back. All right, Jim, a lot of talk today about changes to Disney World in Florida.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which is why, we thought, let's go to the other side of the Atlantic for a bit on today's show. We're over at Disneyland Paris, which even as Len and I speak, just a few weeks out from some pretty huge changes.
Right.
But today we're going to start with Disney Hotel New York, The Art of Marvel. Some of you may recall that when this first hotel first opened, April of 1992, and again, that was part of the official launch of Euro Disneyland, now Disneyland Paris. You remember this time, Len, when Michael Eisner, he was in charge of the Disney company, and this is when he was in his architecture patron phase.
It's my favorite Michael Eisner. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Michael hired the Robert Sterns in the world, but in this case, it was Michael Graves who got tapped to design this particular hotel. And Graves, is it fair to say, is sort of a master of postmodernism? I mean,
oh yeah, fair, yeah. I mean, I'm literally down the street right now from the Celebration post office that he designed.
Okay. So and Michael did a number of business buildings for Disney in the late '80s, early '90s. Team Disney building out in Burbank, and by the way, Michael got rewarded for being a patron because the company has since renamed the Team Disney Burbank building to the Michael D. Eisner building.
Sure.
But that opens in 1990. Same year, we get the Dolphin at Walt Disney World. Mm-hmm. That opens in January. And then its companion structure, the Swan, that opens in June of 1990.
And those are definitely both postmodernism designs.
Oh, yes. All right. And then we have the Hotel New York at the Disneyland Paris Resort, which leans into early 20th century Art Deco, and it celebrates the city that never sleeps. But if we jump ahead 25 years, Disney's Hotel New York is, not seeming sleepy, but tired, and thinking that this Disneyland Paris resort needs a reinvention. The company shutters this 561-room structure in January 2019, and then turns it into Disney's Hotel New York: The Art of Marvel. And the way they did this was, first and foremost, Len, they kept a lot of Michael Graves' architectural artistry in place, but at the same time upgrading the hotel's amenities. So the Hotel New York goes from being an affectionate look back at the city circa 1930 to more representative of a modern-day Manhattan. Now, as for the Art of Marvel aspect of this redo, Disney did that by lining the walls of this hotel with more than 350 pieces of artwork that spanned, not just the classic Marvel comics, but also the MCU movies and TV shows. In addition, 50 exclusive pieces of art were created just for Disney's Hotel New York, The Art of Marvel, by noted artists all over Europe. All right, so when this place finally reopens, June of 2021, Marvel fans are dazzled by the Hotel New York. As soon as they stepped into the radically reimagined lobby, which now features a full-size recreation of Tony Stark's wall of armor.
I mean, when you need decor, one of the first thoughts is suits of armor. Like that's how I decorate. Right?
There we go. All right, and so these folks are wowed by what is now one of the largest publicly viewable collections of Marvel artwork in the world. But here's the thing, Len. Not all of the pieces on display at Disney's Hotel New York: The Art of Marvel are actually publicly viewable. Some of these items are hidden away in the 25 suites in the resort that are themed to specific Marvel superheroes, while still others are behind closed doors in the hotel's corporate meeting spaces, and which became a point of frustration for Marvel fans. The idea that if they spent a day wandering up and down the halls of, the Hotel New York, The Art of Marvel, they could see most of these comic book treasures on display, but not all. But thankfully, solution was found last June 2025. Gestal 10. This is a Berlin-based publishing house. It released Disney Hotel New York: The Art of Marvel, which, by the way, Len, deliberately features this subtitle on the cover of this coffee table book: The Complete Art Collection.
Italicized, bold, underlined.
There we go. And so you no longer have to wander up and down the hallways of this Disneyland Paris hotel. If you're a Marvel fan and you want to see a specific John Romita cover or a particular painting by Alex Ross, every single poster, comic book panel, and fine piece of art that can be found, that there in that hotel can now be found inside of this 240-page coffee table book. And I bring this up, Len, because Disney Hotel New York: The Art of Marvel, again, originally published June of last year, 2025, and I'm guessing that the English edition of this coffee book, and remember, this is, we're talking about Disneyland Paris, so the primary book for this, the lead sled dog, if you will, was the French edition.
Oh, yeah, that's right. 2 editions. I threw a link to it in the show notes. There are 2 editions available.
There we go. But it would appear that the English edition did, again, of the complete art collection, did not sell as well, because when this Gestal 10 book was originally published, $60 a copy, and Amazon now has it listed for $34 a copy. And in fact, if you're not picky and you're willing to live with a used copy of this book, you can get it for as low as $30, which I want to remind folks is a lot cheaper than buying a plane ticket to go over to Paris and then spending an afternoon wandering up and down hallways, where, again, you can see most, but not all of these pieces on display. And by the way, another quick side story about Disney's Hotel New York, the Art of Marvel. That was the name, Len, when this resort reopened in June of 2021. However, some 13 months later, July of 2022, Disney then amends this hotel name. It drops the apostrophe S. And again, that's been part of the hotel's name since April of 1992. So now instead of being Disney's Hotel New York, the Art of Marvel, it's now Disney Hotel New York, the Art of Marvel. And I want to remind folks, this isn't the first time Disney has done this. June of 2010. While Disney's California Adventure was undergoing its very first reimagining.
The first thing I thought of right there, yeah.
There we go.
Okay, good.
All right. 5 years to do, $1.2 billion to complete.
Wait, Jim, are you saying that when Disney's California Adventure opened, guests liked it but didn't love it? Go ahead.
Wow. All right. That is what we call in the business a callback, folks. I applaud. That's good. That's good. Anyway, as for this change, George Kalogridis, the then president of the Disneyland Resort, he opted to pull that apostrophe S off of this theme park's name, changing Disney's California Adventure to just Disney California Adventure. And
the corporate management team at Kinko's, Jim, rejoiced.
Well, yes. Now, that brings us to the interesting point here, folks, because dropping that apostrophe S, it was pricey. It meant newly repainted signs all over property, changing that theme park's official letterhead, not to mention new business cards for every single executive associated with that place.
Banners, signage, publicity, pamphlets.
Okay.
Folder,
yes. Again, the folks at Kinko's rejoice because the cost of making the seemingly small change rippled out across the Disneyland Resort and wound up costing the mouse millions of dollars, which is nothing compared to what the Walt Disney World went through back in January of 2008 when they changed the name of that resort's third theme park from Disney MGM to Disney Hollywood Studio. And again, our pal over at Disney Unpacked, our Patreon project, veteran Imagineer Jim Schull, shared with Len and I that name change, when you factored in the highway signs out on I-4, all of the billboards all over Florida and, the South that promoted that theme park, everything that needed to be changed in addition to letterhead, merch, that in this case, it was tens of millions of dollars. And again, the reason I bring this up today is that as of today, the day this podcast goes live, we are 5 weeks out from when Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris then gets rebranded as Disney Adventure World, which makes you wonder, Glenn, how many euros that the Disneyland Paris Resort is going to have to spend on that name change. And just bring things to a close here. Here's hoping that some 13 months from now, the folks over in France don't suddenly decide that Disney's Adventure World needs an apostrophe S.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where our latest exclusive show is a live walk through the modern Epcot with me, Jim, and Jim Schull. And there's a link in the show notes. And on the next Disney journey, veteran Imagineer Jim Schull talks about an opening day attraction at DCA that can hold 3.2 million gallons of water, but also has a tunnel that you can drive full-size trucks through. If you want to find out which specific ride Jim Schull is talking about, click on the link in the show notes. On next week's show, Jim's going to continue the history of the Great Movie Ride. And you can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. And you can find both of us with Chris Cox on The Case For with Chris Cox, a new podcast where Chris, Jim, and I debate one theme park topic at a time, and you get to vote on who's right. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey and David Gray, who'll be giving tips on how to plump up your plumage for better market prices at the Chandler Ostrich Festival, running March 13th through the 15th and 20th through the 22nd, 2026, at the Rawhide Western Town and Event Center. That's on North Loop Road in beautiful downtown Chandler, Arizona. While Eric and Dave are doing that, please go on to iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.